Hello everybody, I'm Emma from Emma's Wild Garden Shop in Ormskirk. If I haven't met you before, hello. Hopefully I will get to, when all of this crazy is over, I'll get to meet you in the shop one day. But you have bought into or you've been gifted one of my wreath kits this Christmas. And although I've never done one of these videos before, hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips in order that you get to make something similar to this of your own to enjoy on your Christmas door or to give to somebody else. Now you've actually got a few more ingredients than I've actually got shown on here, but I've shown you this simple version to give you an idea. You compare down, you can choose whatever you want to use of the materials I've given you or add more to it, but I'll talk about that as it goes on. So you've probably already opened up your kit and set everything up on a table. The only thing you should need in addition to the kit materials is a pair of scissors. Normal, kitchen scissors are fine. You might find that secateurs will help with cutting the fare if you've got secateurs as well, but normal scissors are absolutely fine, and they're often the things that I give out in the workshops anyway. So you will have your already pre-mossed wreath ring, okay, which will look like this, and this is covered in sphagnum moss. It's British sourced, so it will be sustainably sourced as well. Sphagnum moss is a fabulous resource, but obviously we want to make sure we're being as environmentally aware as possible. And you'll notice that this is really wet, it's really moist. This will make sure that all of the materials that you're going to add in, all of the foliage, all of the berries, anything else that you decide to add stays hydrated while it's hanging on your door. So it's supposed to be that wet. It smells rather delicious as well. You've also got a couple of branches of fir, okay, which looks like this. You will have some eucalyptus that I've added in, not only because the foliage looks different, it's a lighter shade, but obviously eucalyptus at Christmas time smells absolutely delicious. It dries really well as well, so that will stay looking lovely. I've added in some pussy willow, which I've not got here, but I've added some extra little ingredients into the kit bags that you've got in front of you. Again, you can choose to use it or not. You've also got a little bag which contains red velvet to make ribbons, if you want to add ribbons to your finished wreath. A couple of large pine cones for a very traditional festive look. You've got red holly berries, again to complement the red bows. And you've also got a handful of dried oranges, and again, they smell gorgeous. They instantly remind me of Christmas morning when you get like tangerines and stockings and things. They smell lovely. The other ingredient and the last ingredient you have is a spool of reel wire, and this is invaluable. This is the main thing that you need for your wreath today, or if you go ahead and make wreaths, spring wreaths, ones in the summer, you can continue to adorn your door, all the way through the year. It's just having one of these because you will use that to attach everything today. Okay, first thing you need to do is have everything laid out in front of you. I'm going to picture all of you, obviously, creating your wreaths next to a Christmas tree, wearing a bobble hat, Christmas jumper, this is standard gear. When you're making wreaths, the sillier the better. But have everything laid out in front of you, and the very first thing you're going to do, or what I usually do when I'm making wreaths up, is cut down all of the soft material from the spine, which is this lovely long central piece of your fir. You're going to cut all of this excess foliage off. Okay, so if you literally, you want like these giant hand-size pieces, and cut all of it off because we want to have as little waste as possible. You'll get to use all of it, and you'll see how in a little bit. So do that till all of the spine is totally clear and you're literally just left with this one long piece. It's too hard to use, so you can just discard that. Ideally, if you've got a green bin or a compost heap, stick it on the compost heap, that would be perfect. Do the same with your eucalyptus, and you're just going to have some smaller pieces that are going to act as like these frondy sections around your wreath. So cut everything down so that you literally have everything laid out in front of you. Okay, I'll leave you with that for a minute and I'll be back in 2 ticks. Okay, so hopefully now you have got a lot of little bunches in front of you. And now I want to show you how you're going to attach that to your mossed wreath ring. Now, underneath all of that gorgeous sphagnum moss, this is what you've got, a really simple metal frame. Obviously wider round the outside, and you've got this narrow one here. This outer ring is what you're going to be looking for now, and it's hidden amidst here. So you have made up all of your bunches, tied them all up with the wire, and now you're left with, you know, a full length. So keep the rest of this wire attached to your spool. Okay, I'm going underneath my moss ring, and I'm finding, it's not too difficult to find, the top layer of the ring that I've built the frame upon. And I'm simply going to tie my wire round a couple of times. Now you don't need to knot it, you don't need to you know, kind of twist it around or anything like that. The wire that we're using is really strong stuff, and as long as you wrap it around this initial wire frame just a couple of times, stick the end into the moss, and then I'm going to wrap round just a couple of times and pull firm. Okay, now if you pull tightly enough, you shouldn't be able to get your finger underneath the wire that you've just attached. If you can get your finger underneath it easily without literally burrowing into the moss, then it's too loose, so just tighten it up a little bit. Once you've gone around a couple of times, you're now ready to add your first bunch of foliage. So, as I mentioned just before, it's really important that this flat cut that you've made across your bunch is going to go, or it's going to make contact with the moss itself, because that's where it's going to stay hydrated. Okay, so it's at an angle, and that's great because it's also going to lift the foliage up a little bit to give that sense of fullness that you want. And you're going to take the wire back round so that it's covering the bunch that you've just put in, and I would do it twice just so that it's firm. And again, pull it tight, and you'll see that that's lifted up from the surface, and that's going to happen all the way around. Now, because we don't want to see this moss here, as attractive as it is, the majority of you will want to cover it up. I know, I remember a lady on one of the workshops last year, she loved very green sphagnum moss that we had, and she left some of it there because she liked that really natural wild look, and it did look great when it was finished. But most of you will want to cover up this bit. So those little tiny pieces that we talked about earlier that you might instantly have discarded, they are going to form a little bit of cushioning and also a bit of added foliage cover for around the sides of our bunches. And again, you're wrapping round. Now, what I didn't show then, you're going in the same direction the whole time. Don't feel tempted to kind of, build up, because it never works out quite as you want it to. It's always better to go in one direction. And the same when you're adding these extra little bits of fur that were cut off earlier, you want the rounded end in the same direction as the bunches that you've put in, and the piece that you've cut, facing that way, so that it's always getting covered up. You don't want to see any of these unsightly bits when you've finished. Okay, so I've added those extra little bits. Then I'm creating a little bit of space, but I want to layer, so I just want to cover up the wire from the first piece that I've put in by placing the next bit on top. And again, you're making the ends that you've cut touch the surface of the sphagnum moss so that it's going to stay hydrated. Check that I can still see the berries or any other ingredients of interest that you've got on your last piece. And you're going to simply wrap the wire around again. And if you pull it tight, you'll notice that that makes contact again. Don't worry if your berries come off, you'll have enough to still hold interest, and you can add lots more material later. So again, I've gone round twice, and I'm going to cover up these bare bits at the side with the little cuttings of fir. Okay, and then repeat. Oops. Okay, so you're going to do that until you've covered the whole of your wreath ring. When you've done that, leave your wire attached, and I'll show you how to cut it off and tie it up so that it doesn't, so that nothing falls off. Okay, good luck. Okay, so hopefully you've covered the whole of your wreath base by now. In order to take off the wire, you should have gone around your last piece of, or your last bunch of foliage a couple of times. Once you've gone around it a couple of times, leave a length of maybe 15 centimetres or so, snip it off, and all you're going to do is find the last piece of wire that you've attached, or the wreath ring, just something for it to hold on to, tie it round, and simply, and if the wire's a little bit too long, which this bit is, you're just going to press the end into the moss so you've not got any sharp edges at all. And that's it. Put that to the side for now, and I'll show you how to add some of your little ornaments, or add a couple of little additions as well. Okay, so in true Blue Peter style, here's one I made earlier. And you'll see I've already attached some pine cones. I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. And I'm going to attach a ribbon. And you may also want to, which I might do on here just to demonstrate, add, some pieces of orange to lift, the colour and have even more of the traditional going on. Okay, so I always attach these bits after I've added everything else. It just is easier that way, and it's also a good way for you to see, where you want things to go as well. Whether you're looking at a bare spot that you've missed out, or whether you want to just have a bit of jaunty colour, added in particular points, it's entirely up to you. But in your kit, you'll have been given some of this red velvety ribbon, and I went very traditional. It's also got a bit of wiring, so it'll allow you to kind of ruffle it up if you need to. And all you need to do initially with the ribbon, if you decide to add it, create a bow. I'm not the best in the world at creating bows, but very straightforward bow shape, and you can faff around doing this as much as you want. And naturally you don't need to use the red. You might decide to be going for a particular colour theme, and you've added, your own little ornaments of particular colours. Okay, so I just want to have a bit of that velvety showing there, just so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, get it all into the shape that you want before you start. And here I've left this a little bit longer, so naturally I would want those to be at the same length. So snip it down to the point you need. Now at the back, this is where you're going to attach your wire. So again, this is, if you cut lots of little lengths initially, that will help you out. But I've left this much longer than when I was making the bunches earlier on. And the reason being is that I want it to thread through here, but it's also going to wrap round the back of my wreath. So I'm taking it in, giving it a little twist, and then I should be left with this, you know, with two little tails coming off here. So as you can see now, you've got these longer tails of the wire here, and that is to enable you to attach it, and you can, and your wreath should be robust enough to be able to do this. You're literally twisting it back on itself. Okay. Snip it off, and again, you're just going to tuck the ends into that moss so you've got no sharp edges. They won't scratch your door, they won't catch you if you tuck them in there. And then you're left with your bow on the front, and of course you could have a massive one, you could have a tiny little one, you could decide not to have it at all. Okay, and in the same fashion with your pine cones, I always like adding wire to pine cones. It's quite a satisfying job to do. So your pine cones are all open, they're nice and dry, so you've got lots of open spaces, but regardless of how dry they are, you will always have this cluster at the bottom that hasn't quite opened wide. But using the wire, you're simply feeding in to these narrower little pieces here until you get all the way round. And again, you're going to twist. So you've got them with these tails, and again, you can attach them where you want, as many as you want. You could add one, you could leave them off, you could do the same with any type of cone that you've got. Now, a little bit differently with the oranges, we're going to have to go through as close to the rind as possible. If you try and go through the centre, it's too brittle. So you're literally going to take your wire and go as close to the rind, which is going to give it a little bit of structure, a little bit of you know, firmness for when you're attaching it, okay, and wire it through. Now, I always think that oranges look good when they're 2 or 3 of them are tied in together. So I'm going to go for 3 here, different sizes. Does smell gorgeous. Okay, and again, you can twist, find a spot that's perhaps a little bit bare, move your foliage aside because you don't want to see your wire, so you're going to have the wired side against the foliage so that it can be disguised, you know, when you've added it on. And again, I'm just going to twist and poke back in to the moss. Okay, so you should have everything attached by now, or certainly you're going to go and get everything attached by now. And the last thing that we're going to do is add some string so that you can hang it on your door. So I'm going to leave you to finish adding those little bits, and then we'll finish it with a little bit of twine. Now, I know some of you will have different ways of hanging wreaths on your door, whether you've got those door hangers, you know, that kind of stick onto the top. You can get these cool little sucky things that go on. But string, the twine that I've put into your bags is as good as any. So you've got a fairly long length of twine that's been added in. You're going to double it up, okay? Then you're going to go where you want the top of your wreath to be. Mine's going to be by these oranges here, so that it's in line with the bow at the bottom. Okay. And I'm simply going to thread the loose ends round the back until it lies flat. Now, the reason you want it flat at the back rather than on the top is so that when you hang it up, it's upright and it's not at an angle. Okay, so if you have it at the back, that's where it should lie flat on your door. And that, as they say, is it. Obviously, if there is anything that, you know, you've forgotten, The pauses in the video allow you to go back and have a little look again. You've also got little step-by-step instructions inside, but it really is, once you get started creating those bunches, it's very straightforward. The bind wire does a lot of the work for you, and it's about having fun. So although the kit that you've got there is quite traditional with the reds and the greens, the pine cones, the velvet ribbon, of course you could discard all of those ingredients altogether and go for something totally and utterly unique, and you know, all the better for it if it's stuff that you've foraged and you found. And thank you very much again, and all that's left to say is to wish you a very happy Christmas. I hope that you get to enjoy it as best as you possibly can under these current conditions, and I look forward to welcoming you back into the shop, and hopefully this time next December, you know, on one of the workshops in-house, which would be lovely. Take care. Bye.